Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heal and Restore podcast with your host, me, Randy, and then the hostess with the mostest, Miss Cathy.
Hello.
How are you
So I
all
had to fix
today?
your fluffy hair there for a minute.
Yeah, well, fluff is okay. So
It is okay.
yeah, we missed last week.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks here. It
Yeah.
just feels like transition of things and
A lot of different things happening, so we just we apologize and we try not to do that, but it just happened this 1 week. So, but we're back on it.
here we are.
Here we are. The last one we talked about was quit taking things personally.
Yeah. Oh God, that felt like it was so long ago. But then that's a conversation we have quite often. So
That's quite and that's actually the title of my new book, Quit Taking Things Personally.
Yeah. So it's it's always a good topic.
Yeah, it is a good topic.
What are we bringing today?
We're going to be bringing today vulnerability, the hidden strength in your marriage.
Yeah.
And that could be a scary one.
Yeah. So, as we open this up, I'll just let people know, by exploring something that makes many of us uncomfortable, but it might just be the secret weapon for a deeper, healthier relationship, and that's vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is uncomfortable, but it's so necessary
Very
to
uncomfortable.
build health in your relationships.
Well, many of us have not ever been allowed to be vulnerable.
Yeah, we weren't taught what vulnerability looks like,
and we tried to be vulnerable when we were kids. We got shut down, and it's a plethora of things that cause us from being vulnerable.
Right, but I love what Brene Brown says, and she's such a great author and a great speaker when it comes to these types of topics and codependency and things of that nature.
Yes.
But she says that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. But in marriage, it's often misunderstood as a weakness, which I find crazy. It's, it brings all these beautiful things, but in marriage, it can be considered a weakness.
Well, I think that's in life, a lot of people can consider it being a weakness, right?
Yeah.
But it's more so in a marriage that
because you're in a relationship
with
another
somebody,
right?
And especially we're men, we're supposed to be strong and stoic, right? So we can't be vulnerable.
No,
we're not supposed to be vulnerable.
Well, we're going to talk about that too as well. So here's a few things we'll be talking about in this episode. Is what vulnerability really means in a relationship. We want to know why it's hard, and then we want to know how it can transform connection and intimacy, because all of those things are tied up in vulnerability. But if we don't know, we don't know.
No.
So we're going to help get us there. So
and again, it goes down to our expectations too. That we're afraid to talk about our expectations because we don't want to be vulnerable.
True, that's true. But that's expectations is a whole nother level of that. Yeah. So let's talk about what vulnerability really is. So Randy, tell us define vulnerability.
It's being open, honest, showing your emotions without guarantee of an outcome. And with that being said, because no guarantee of an outcome, what we're doing is it's making us capable of being physically or emotionally hurt. Right? We're being honest about some feelings that we have. And a lot of us as children, when we were honest like that, it resulted in some sort of emotional discomfort or physical discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? That's stupid. You have no right to feel that way. So it creates in us. It can create in us a physical or emotional hurt, right? If we're being vulnerable to the wrong people.
With the wrong people, that's the key. So the other thing that I find interesting is, the difference between vulnerability versus oversharing versus emotional dumping.
Right.
And it's interesting that this even came up because one of our friends, Tracy, asked about that. She asked, about the oversharing. And so I think that to understand vulnerability versus oversharing versus emotional dumping, we need to know what those key differences are. And so here's kind of just how it breaks down. For vulnerability, as an example.
We talk about intention, right? Number one.
The intention of vulnerability is to build trust, connection, or understanding.
Yes.
With oversharing, our intention is to seek connection or attention, and that's typically unfiltered, just blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then emotional dumping, the intention behind that is to release emotional pressure without awareness, which is very, very interesting to me. We're just dumping without being aware of what we're saying, where it's going, who it's being spoken to.
Right.
And then when we talk about vulnerability, the awareness of vulnerability is where we are emotionally self-aware and we consider others. But if we're oversharing, the awareness becomes lacks the self-awareness or discernment. And in emotional dumping, it's a disregard of others' emotional state or their capacity to be able to take on our emotional dumping. And then the boundaries. We talk about boundaries a lot. When we're being vulnerable, our boundary is that we're respecting the timing of another person, the depth, and the audience. So we're taking all of those things into consideration when we're vulnerable. But if we're oversharing, we're sharing too much, too soon, with little to no filter. And then when we're emotional dumping, there are no boundaries. It can be invasive, it could be aggressive, it could just be, like I say, just way too much for anybody. And then when we talk about tone, and tone is something
that's huge.
That we talk about. When we're being vulnerable, we're going to be honest, we're going to be open, and we're going to be balanced. It feels like peace. I think that's what I feel. And if we're oversharing, it's unfiltered and impulsive, so that can come out, aggressive. It can come out hard. It can come out angry.
We're not thinking about what we say.
Yeah, not
it's
at
just
all.
Coming out. Just what we think is, like say, unfiltered. It just we puke it all over the place.
Yeah. And then our tone when we're talking about emotional dumping, it's intense. It gets heavy, and it's always just going to be one-sided. So that's a huge key there. And then when we talk about vulnerability and the impact it has on another, this is really key. When we are vulnerable, it's building safety and it's building trust. But if we're oversharing, it can feel awkward and unsafe. And if we're in an emotional dumping mindset, it becomes overwhelming. It drains another person. It becomes a burden to the listener. And that gets heavy again.
Before I got help, that's what I was doing a lot of, was that emotional dumping, and people just getting sick and tired of it. It was the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and when we want to reciprocate something, when we're vulnerable, it leaves room for a mutual connection. Like conversation can take place in vulnerability. But when we're oversharing, it's often one-sided, it's abrupt, it's just, it sounds hard, there's bitterness to that. And then when we're emotional dumping, it's typically still one-sided. There's no room for a response or little room for a response. And then the overall outcome of being vulnerable, it creates that emotional intimacy and trust with another. When we're oversharing, the outcome is discomfort and distance. If you've ever had a conversation with somebody who has overshared, sometimes you don't want to have a conversation with them for a while because you just need to have that space.
That happens a lot with people that will go up to somebody and say, "How you doing today?" Right, and then the person starts sharing and dumping everything on them. So we have to be very careful as people. If you're going to ask somebody how they're doing, be prepared to set a boundary with them so they don't keep dumping everything on you.
Right. And then our outcome for emotional dumping is there's listener fatigue. They get disconnect or resentments. And then that's how relationships start struggling and start kind of diminishing. So, in a marriage, when we're admitting fear, we might ask for help by saying, "I don't know how to fix this." That would be an example of how you would open up a conversation about vulnerability.
I've been going through this stuff. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to do. I'm looking for some guidance. I know you can't fix me, but I could sure use some guidance. And maybe
I would love your input. It's a very inviting thing when we become vulnerable. We're asking for somebody to come into our space that we feel safe with, and that we trust, and that we know will guide and lead us.
We're checking our ego and our pride at the door.
Absolutely,
we're just letting it all go.
So we all have stories of times where we were open and vulnerable. You were very vulnerable with me. Of course, I didn't know much about vulnerability at the time, and I was in the fix-it mindset. But share a time where you felt like you were the most vulnerable. And I know we've talked about this many times.
A lot. But the reality is this is the ultimate of being vulnerable. I carried the secret of my abuse in my first marriage and pretty much destroyed it. So I never told anybody, period, that I'd been sexually abused. Nobody knew, right? And so Cathy and I, we started dating, and we were at a wine bar in Dana Point, and for for some reason, I felt it just came out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no feeling about it.
Did you even think about it?
No, I didn't even think about it. But I think that's where God, had His hand in it.
Mm-hmm.
I just let Cathy know everything that had happened to me, and it was being extremely vulnerable because I figured, well, she's either going to run and never see me again, or she's going to stay with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she wanted to fix me. She figured she
at the time, I thought I had a project on my hand.
But if we go back to that, vulnerability is a chance of being physically or emotionally hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could have been very much emotionally hurt at that point in time if Cathy would have bailed, but that if that would have happened, that would have saved me a lot of long-term
Mm-hmm.
pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then again, it might have made me shut down forever.
Right. That's true. Right. And it's interesting. We were talking about this before we started recording about what our story would be of vulnerability, and I couldn't think of one at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, thinking about our history and our story, I had to be vulnerable and be, after you had the affair, even to be able to ask questions and to be able
Mm-hmm.
to open up with a counselor and a therapist and getting the help I needed. That alone is becoming vulnerable, saying
Right.
that I can't do this myself, but I know people that will help me.
Right.
And then being able to ask questions so that that I could become healthy. And honestly, I think that was the start of deepening our relationship.
Yeah, because that's a vulnerability that, well, number one, a lot of men would say, I don't want to quit talking about it. It's done and over with. What's wrong with you? I thought I was sorry, and it's not going to happen again. But we have very excellent counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was told that when Cathy opens up, my job is to listen to her, right? Validate how she felt, and then just tell her that I'm working on changing.
And because of that, it gave me an opportunity to be vulnerable. Yeah. That felt safe. It was a safe space.
Right, exactly.
So, but we want to talk too a little bit about why vulnerability feels so risky. Because it can be risky. And there's so many reasons for it, but some of the main ones are fear of rejection.
Well, yeah.
Fear of being judged, maybe appearing weak or needy. And a lot of people, when we ask that question, what does vulnerability mean to you? That is like probably the number one answer we hear is weakness.
Right.
But it's just the opposite of that.
I say this all the time, and I said it in front of a lot of people, that only a weak person hides their weaknesses, mm-hmm. right? It's a truly strong and courageous man or person to talk about their weaknesses to the right people in the right setting, and that's even biblical. Paul says, "I boast about my weaknesses because therefore I become strong."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's true.
But a lot, especially men and women, right? Cathy and I, our work, we're finding out that women are pretty much the same as men are when it comes to this.
Yep. No. And in fact, you ask a woman what vulnerability means, and she'll probably tell you weakness as well. Right. Yeah. So, and then another reason that vulnerability can feel risky is because when we're children, we're conditioned in a certain way. Sometimes there's gender expectations. Men are sought to be stoic and strong, and don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about.
Don't talk about your emotions. Don't talk about your feelings.
Right. And so our childhood conditioning affects how we learn vulnerability.
Right.
And it's not until for us anyways, until we became adults and got into our own therapy that we understood the impact of how important vulnerability is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that goes, with the past hurt betrayal can make openness feel dangerous. And again, I'm going to go back to your childhood. How many times as a child, adolescent, teenager, young adult, did you attempt in your family, right, in your nuclear family, to talk about things, to be vulnerable with them about how you felt, only to be shut down?
Yeah.
Things like, who do you think you are? A plethora of different remarks that just made you feel like, why would I say anything? Why should I be vulnerable? Because as a child, all I did was get shut down all the time. And believe it or not, that happens a lot. Most of our clients, when we bring this up, that's exactly what happens. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even for me, I was never taught how to express anger. I was never taught how to express feelings in a healthy manner.
Right.
So for me, my dad didn't call me Chatty Cathy for nothing. But I also learned how to react, not respond in unhealthy ways. And as a result of that, I had my mouth washed out with soap a lot. And so,
And by the way, that's very abusive for those that are
Yes.
listening. Never wash your child's
Yeah.
mouth out with soap.
No,
That's a
definitely.
very abusive act.
But where I'm going with
Yeah.
all of this is when I was doing this step work. Now, mind you, this is many, many years into my journey. I discovered through the step work, well, it's no wonder I bark things out because I'm just trying to get them out right away. It's almost like saying what I want to say and run away real quick. Because I never learned how to speak from a healthy perspective when I had feelings and emotions that I needed to express. So mine would come out sideways, and my punishment was getting my mouth washed out with soap because I'm sure it was pretty bad.
And, Kathy's working on that right now, too. We both work on it. That's what Kathy just said. I just bark it out because I want to say it and get it out. The effects that all that has on our childhood, rendering our childhood punishment, it's not discipline, it's punishment, has on us in the long run is
yeah. I'm 62 years old and I'm still learning how to respond to anger, respond to having my emotions be met, things of that nature.
Yeah, respond instead of react.
Yeah, right, I'm learning to respond because before it was all reactive.
Yeah, exactly.
So we want to talk a little bit too, because this is important. This is something that we work on not only for ourselves but for our clients, is how vulnerability strengthens a marriage. Because it takes a lot to be vulnerable, but when we can get to a place where two people can become vulnerable, it will strengthen their marriage. And the way that it can do that, it'll build a deeper trust and an emotional intimacy. You feel close to your partner when you can be open and honest and vulnerable and say things that are hard. It also it also creates a safe space for conflict and growth. I can think about probably years ago how when we weren't being vulnerable, we didn't have a safe space, and I wanted to just run all the time. Yeah, and I can still run a little bit as well.
Kathy's still a little. She's working hard on that.
But we've got a safer space, so it's not coming up as much, and I think that is a direct result of becoming more vulnerable with you and with myself as well. And then it also it encourages honesty and empathy back and forth. We can each give it to each other when we are creating that vulnerability in our marriage. Right. And then I love this one. This is we're in this together. It strengthens teamwork. You and me, we're in this together.
Right. We have to remember that we're teammates, we're partners, we're husband and wife. We're not enemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be things like, as an example, might be sharing things about money or parenting or aging. Instead of bottling it up and not talking about it, it's being vulnerable and having those hard conversations.
Especially about money.
Yeah. But something that just is kind of on my heart right now. We just had this conversation with a client the other night. Talking about aging and what do we do upon death. I mean, we don't have any of that planned out yet. We don't have, are we going to get cremated? Are we going to be buried? Are we going to we don't have that.
Oh, just take me up on the old oak tree and bury me.
Right. But those are the deep, vulnerable conversations that help bring people closer together. So, we got to have it. I don't want it, but we have to.
You got to have it, right? Yeah. And what we learned the other day, you're going to go broke being buried.
Yeah. Right. So we got to figure out a game plan here. But now we want to talk about a little bit about how we can practice healthy vulnerability. Right. So it might be that we just start small. We share something that's uncomfortable, but not overwhelming.
That's the important part. It's like baby steps. Everything's baby steps.
Yeah, we talk about that. Using language like I feel instead of blaming, like when you do this, it's like I feel this way when this happens. And so that invites you into the conversation instead of pushes you away.
Again, the one thing that we work with all of our clients, and one of the 98% of all relationships end up in divorce because of poor communication. And that's that I versus you statement.
Right.
As soon as you use the word you,
defense
walls goes up, and it's an accusation. So it's switching from you to Hey, the other night when we had this conversation about money, I felt that I wasn't being heard.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It just now you're talking about how you feel instead of what you can't blame it on somebody else.
Right. Not only using the I feel, but the timing is key. It really matters when you're going to sit down and have these vulnerable conversations. Obviously, you're not going to have one in the middle of a heated argument.
No.
Not the best, safest place to be doing that. When your spouse gets home,
right.
You give some time, give a break, give 20 minutes, and just let them know, hey, when you have some time, I'd like to sit down. I have a conversation that I'd like to have your attention with.
That's one thing we learned how to do. I had to learn to do, especially those 10 years when Cathy was still working and I was at home, and I could have a conversation with Cathy in the day, sometime during the day. I knew exactly what kind of day she was having. So I learned that when Cathy came home, right, first of all, I always made sure, because I was home, that the house was clean for her.
Right.
So when she walked into a clean house, she would always come up and say hi to me, would give her a kiss, and then I would give her the time to do whatever she had to do.
Yeah.
Right? Just to decompress from the day. And then when she was ready, she would come down and sit down and we could talk. Right? And then even at that, we never dumped something on somebody.
No. It was really, for us, it was a lot of check-ins and stuff. The timing does matter.
Yeah,
when you want to have a serious, vulnerable conversation, timing will matter.
Right.
And then the other part is not just having the conversation, but how well are you responding to your partner's vulnerability?
Right.
Are you taking the time to really listen to understand? Are you affirming what you hear and how difficult that might be? You're not fixing them. We can't do that, because fixing them will lead to more struggles. So being able to just respond well to your partner's vulnerability is going to be key to build that intimacy and that closeness between you.
Right. Not react, but respond.
Respond, yeah. So, we've got a couple questions that we can help you with. These are, things that you can be doing.
Right.
And we call them our journaling prompts that we can share with you. So if you have struggled with having vulnerable conversations, start small, like we said. And you might start out with saying something like, something I've been needing, but I haven't known how to ask you for it is, what that does, that encourages that emotional honesty, the vulnerability. It could be something like, here's another prompt. Right now, I feel most supported when you, da-da-da-da-da. That builds awareness of each other's love languages. And then something that is a big key is, what does emotional safety look like to you?
Yes.
It invites clarity, empathy, bringing them in to what their deeper needs are.
You can even go back to the first check-in. It's like, what's one thing you're feeling but haven't said out loud this week? Right? And that's important.
Something, that's something you can do yourself without having your partner there.
Right.
Just reevaluate your week. What's one thing you're feeling but you haven't said it out loud?
You haven't said. And do I need to have this conversation with my spouse or partner, or is it something that I just need to work through myself?
Yeah.
Right. So we have, so that's one thing we have to look at. Is this what we say is choose your battle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you need to have a conversation with your spouse, then again, go back to the timing.
Yeah. So we just want to encourage you as we close this episode out, is have some courageous conversations this week. Look for some prompting questions that will get you started. Because, honestly, as we reflect on this, vulnerability, it is scary. And the reason it's scary is because it makes you be seen.
Oh, it makes you. Yeah.
But it's also the way you truly feel when you feel loved and accepted as well.
When Cathy says it makes you feel seen, it makes you emotionally be seen, right? It's now you're looking. The true intimacy is into you, into me. You see,
into
right?
me, I see, yeah.
So that vulnerability creates that intimacy, right?
Yeah.
So it can be very scary.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So we want to encourage you again to go ahead and look for one small vulnerable moment with your partner this week and sit down and have that vulnerable conversation. And then also a call to action. What we would love to hear is if any of you have a story about a vulnerable moment that helped your marriage, we would love to hear about that.
Yeah.
We would love to hear about that, and so that we all grow when we do things together.
Yes.
And so that not only is it helping you to be able to talk about it, it helps us to be able to see how other people work through those vulnerable moments. So that's really all we have. Next week, I'm excited about this next one because it's one of my favorite topics.
Tough one.
It's a tough one, but it's the power of forgiveness in long-term relationships,
right?
And it's so valuable when we can get to a place of forgiveness. So I'm really looking forward to that.
It's the key. Forgiveness is the key to true freedom, right?
It really is.
In any relationship,
yep.
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, especially those long-term relationships, because you have a history and there's things that might have been built up over the years that we need to really, if there's still a thorn in your side, we need to look at forgiveness.
Yes, and as in with Paul or Jacob wrestling the angel, that thorn might never be removed, but it's there to remind you that we need to work on something.
Yes,
right?
That's good.
So
that's really good. That's good.
It's good, huh?
Yeah, I love that one.
I love the vulnerability is important.
Yep.
So we got our books.
Yeah, we have some books out. We got some books out. We got quite a few books out.
Healing the Wounded Child Within. We've got How to Heal and Restore Your Marriage.
Renewing Bonds.
Hearts United. And we got the 30-Day Devotion of the Wholeness. Right. All those books are available on Amazon.
Check it out.
Check it out. Most of them are available at 3 different. They got paperback, Kindle, and
if you
Audible.
Go to Amazon, you'll see all your options there.
Yeah, all your options there. They're all there.
Yeah. We also want to just invite our listeners to make sure that you're sharing this this podcast with somebody. Take 3 people this week and just say, hey, I'd love for you to take a listen to this podcast. We want to get this spread out to as many people as we can, right? Because we know we're all struggling in some areas of our lives. But in addition to that, we at Heal and Restore Counseling still have our 1 hour, no cost to you discovery session. This gives us an opportunity to hear your story, hear a little bit about where your struggles are, what you're looking for in your desire for coaching. And then we also get to share a little bit about our story because it's important that we know that we can connect with you. We know that we can help you. And we want to make sure that we're the right fit for you. So, so you can check it out. You can contact us through www.healandrestorecounseling.com. And there's a link on there. You can find our books there. You can find some testimonies on there. You can connect with us there for a 1 hour no-cost discovery session.
Or they can just shoot us an email at healandrestorecounseling.com.
healandrestorecounseling@gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
Too many places we're sending them.
My goodness gracious.
So anyways, that's where we are today, but we would love to journey with you.
And then I'm going to put this out there again for everybody. If there's an intern out there that needs some intern hours with social media stuff, we would love to sit down and talk with you, see how we can help each other. We really want to grow this platform. It needs to be grown. People need to hear this stuff.
We need the talented people.
Exactly.
Yeah, we want the talented people.
Yeah, so please, if you're out there or you can help in any way, help us grow our platform. We really, really appreciate it. Just reach out to us. We can have a conversation and see how we can help each other.
Absolutely.
Okay?
That's it.
All right. Remember this. Nobody tells you to love your day. Randy does.
Cathy does.
But more importantly, God does. We bless everybody. Have a fabulous week.
Have a great week.